Hello, hello, everyone. It's so fun to see so many people already on here. If you guys want to throw in the chat, I'm going to type this in, who you are. So just introduce yourself and what your go-to beverage order is at a cafe. I know it's the afternoon, so your favorite afternoon pick-me-up or your go-to order. Right now, I'm looking for inspiration for I feel like I've gotten stale in what I'm ordering, but we'll give it a few minutes for people to jump on, and then we will jump right into things. Okay, gotta look at what people are saying here. Oat milk latte, vanilla latte. Melanie, you gotta clarify, are you going hot or iced? Another iced vanilla latte. Jenny with the non-coffee order. I love it.
Still caffeinated.
Yes. Elena, hi, I'm so happy you're here. I know Becca is typing. She's not a coffee drinker, so I'm curious to hear what she has to say. What? Fair enough. You know, I appreciate the hydration. That's a good reminder. Okay, we'll give it 30 more seconds for people to jump in, and then we will get started. Grace, wonderful. That sounds delicious. Now I wish I had a coffee. Okay. Without further ado, we will jump in and get started. So hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Robole. I'm a mortgage advisor at AnnieMac Home Mortgage. And when I am not helping people through the home buying process, you can catch me doing exactly this, which is finding like-minded people and finding ways that we can walk alongside each other in business and help each other grow our businesses. So story selling is our topic today. And if you don't know this about me already, you'll quickly learn that I am a sucker for a good story. I am the hopeless romantic. You can pull at my heartstrings any day. I will root for the underdog at all times. You know, stories hit me to my core every single time. They captivate me, they move me. I'm 100% all in every time. My favorite time of day is story time with Jude. No matter how my day has gone, the best day or the worst day, being able to lose myself in a good children's book story, which now he has started to read to me, which is so fun. But there's nothing better than that to me. And sharing stories is a tale as old as time, right? It is one of the most innate qualities that humans share. And throughout history, we've seen how stories bring people together in community. So I could not be more excited to be joined by two experts of their crafts, Stephanie Butler and Jenny Burnham, to talk about incorporating storytelling in business. I think now more than ever, people are craving to engage with businesses and brands that are real and genuine people behind them. I think authenticity is the name of the game right now, and these two are experts in that topic. You know, we have a value-packed conversation for y'all today, so I hope that you stick with us through the end, and we will give you a free digital download of the best story selling resources compiled into one spot by the three of us. So I will introduce to you these two lovely ladies with me. I seriously learn something from each of them every single time I talk to them. They are your ultimate hype girls. They are the queens of authenticity, and they are truly the people that you want in your corner. So Stephanie Butler, she's a longtime friend of mine, encourager, a true leader in my eyes. She is the founder of Voices Who Will, which is a business dedicated to helping women succeed by redefining what public speaking means to them. She has an abundance of resources to download from her website, including her ebook that just launched this spring. And she offers one-on-one coaching sessions, which I personally can attest to are amazing. So she's a wealth of knowledge, and I am so happy she's here with us today. And then we have Jenny Burnham, social media master, someone I call my soul sister and a dear friend. So she is the founder of Social Squeeze Co., which helps service-based businesses, specifically owned by women, show up confidently on social media. So she offers expertise in her incredible community, the Content Collective, and through social media management services. And one little secret about Jenny is if you are looking for a good book or a good podcast recommendation, she is your go-to. She is obsessed in the best way about leveling up, like inch by inch. And so she always has the best resources, tips, tricks. So if you're looking for that, go to her. But she's getting tactical with us today about social media, all tangible, ready to implement takeaways. So I can't wait for you guys to share what you have in store for us. Um, to jump right into the good stuff, though, I was listening to a podcast featuring Ashlyn Carter, a copywriter, and she shared some staggering facts that I have not stopped thinking about since. And that the first being that 5.5 million business applications were filed in the US alone last year. On top of that, she shared that ChatGPT has over 180 million users, and a survey by Forbes found that 1 in 3 business owners plan to use that to write content. So, if you've ever felt like it's a little crowded in our marketplace, you're not going crazy. It is noisy out there. And if you find yourself thinking, it feels a little saturated, I feel like I'm trying to differentiate my value adds amongst a sea of people. It is not your imagination. It is not just you. It is noisy, but also know that you are not alone. And most importantly, you have value to bring to the table. You have something that people need to hear. So, how do we cut through this noise and communicate with our audience, meaning our most dreamiest of clients, in a way that resonates with them? Introducing the art of story selling. But you might be sitting there saying, Rachel, I know this is true. I know I have value to bring to the table, but there's still a voice inside my head that says something along the lines of, pop a number into the chat if you resonate with one of these. I don't have stories to tell. I wake up, bring my child to school, go to work, go home, like repeat. Or I just don't want to sound like that cringy saleswoman. If you resonate, like drop a 1 in the chat, drop a 2 in the chat. Or, okay, like I know what I want to say, but I just don't know how to say it. All real, all true feelings. And now I'm going to kick it to Steph to elaborate on this more.
Okay, I love it. I'm seeing a lot of the different numbers come in, and I'm so glad, Rachel, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so glad that you grounded us first in the obstacle that so many of us have, because it is extremely common to find storytelling to be very difficult. I think a lot of my clients, what I see the most of is certainly that number one, right? That idea of I either don't know my story, I don't think I have one, or on the flip side, I don't know how to tell it because I don't think it'll be impactful, right? We want our storytelling to be impactful, but for some reason, we just can't see the impact in our own lives and our own stories. So I want to spend some time looking at what actually is storytelling, right? What are the components of it? And then importantly, okay, how do I tell a good story? So in order to do that, I want to take everyone back to childhood. So if we go to the next slide, you are going to see all sorts of these four different childhood bedtime stories. I have to believe that we all have some sort of commonality around at one point in life we were read a bedtime story. So if you can, as I'm just talking through the slide, if you can put in the title of your favorite storybook, I would just love to see that. Mine is right there, Toot and Puddle. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. Rachel and Jenny were like, "What is that?" But I loved it. Jenny's was Are You My Mother? We have Sweet Sweet Jude sitting there reading his storybook. So throw those in there. And as you're thinking about it, I also want you to think about the components of those stories, right? These stories have an introduction, they have a rising action, they have a climax, they have a falling action, they have a resolution, they have a protagonist, they have an antagonist, they have a theme or a lesson learned at the end. I might be taking you back to elementary school English class with all of these different vocabulary words I'm throwing at you. But importantly, I want you to remember that these are just the very basic components of storytelling. It doesn't have to be that hard. I think today we all get caught up in the idea of, oh, I want to have a really catchy attention grabber, or, oh, I want to foreshadow something crazy in the future. But really, what we need are the most basic components to make up a story. Now, I'm assuming that most of you are not telling children's stories or fairy tales in your business, so I just want to translate this into what this can mean for your business. So if we go to the next slide, you
Ooh,
are going to see a very familiar, hopefully, storytelling arc when we get there. Thank you.
sorry,
All good.
Steph.
You're good. So you're seeing probably a very familiar storytelling arc, right? That line in the middle is something that we probably should feel familiar with. We have that idea of typically the words attached to that arc are the falling action, the rising action, the climax. But the difference here is that when it comes to children's storybooks, those the way we're translating the story today in our business, that is actually persuasive rhetoric, right? So we're not worrying about persuasive rhetoric when we're reading Are You My Mother? But when you're a business owner, the way that you're telling stories is the goal at the end is for that person to trust you, right? And ultimately buy your services, buy your products, work with you, whatever that might be for your business. So, that being said, these different components shift a little bit because they have a different kind of purpose. The purpose you're going to see at the bottom, and all of that, really comes down to how are you building trust with this person over the course of your story. So, first, of course, we have an introduction, right? The purpose here is to relate to your audience. This is what we did at the very beginning of this webinar when we talked about who we were, and then we introduced the topic that hopefully relates with you. Then we introduced the problem. That's where we made you guys care, right? Oh, yes, I know exactly how you're feeling because I also don't think I have a story, or I also don't want to be a sleazy saleswoman, or etc. Now we're with the implication, and the implication is really the question, what is going to happen if I don't solve the problem at hand? So that might be, okay, I might not close as many sales as I want to. I might not have as many leads as I want to if I'm not able to master this storytelling piece. Then we're able to share that solution, right? We're showcasing our expertise. You're showcasing your expertise on here are the solutions that we can provide. And then lastly, of course, the conclusion, this is where you can really continue the relationship. So, all that being said, now we understand really the components of the storytelling arc. What kind of questions, or I'm sorry, what is the right story to tell? That is the next piece that I want to talk about. So, we know the components. Now we're wondering, okay, cool, Stephanie, what is the right story that I should be thinking about and that I should be telling my audience? Humans connect with stories because we are all protagonists in our own stories, right? We are all overcoming our own obstacles. So when you position yourself as a business owner as having a solution, to help your prospect overcome their problem, you are the guide to helping that prospect become the hero of their own story, right? The hero of their own story. I say that because oftentimes we as people want to share our story, right? But when I share my story as like, okay, here's, as a public speaking coach, here's how I overcame, public speaking nerves. Here's how I found my confidence in my voice. I'm then making myself the hero of my story. And my prospect really has no part in that, right? So the piece of what's in it for me isn't quite there for that prospect like it would be if I was making them the hero. Now, there is a time that telling your story is appropriate, right? But that's oftentimes not the hook. That's not the thing that's going to get them right away. That comes in the fifth, sixth, seventh communication, right? So I want you to think about positioning yourself as the guide to help your hero win the day, help them win, and then have them turn around and say, oh my gosh, who is that? Right? There's your opportunity to tell your story and to nurture that relationship. So let's talk about how this can actually happen. If we go to the next slide, I want you to think about a situation, or I want you to put yourself in a situation where you are meeting with a prospect. It's probably the first situation or the first communication. So you're either having a free consultation, you're meeting with them for coffee, it's a potential buyer, it's a potential seller, it's whoever that looks like in your business. You have the conversation, and by the end of it, they have not 100% committed to working with you. So what do you need to do when you leave? Well, you need to send a follow-up email. So let's talk about what that email should look like. The first sentence should be the problem. And when I say that, I mean it. I mean the first sentence. We don't need, hey, so great having coffee with you, or, oh my gosh, thanks so much for the time. The first sentence is, hey, I was thinking about how you were struggling with X. So for me, in my business, it's probably, hey, I was thinking about how you were struggling with the nerves of public speaking. Then you want to position your service or product as a way that's going to solve that problem, right? So then it may look like, I have a certain amount of sessions that by the end of it, I know it's going to get you on stage feeling really, really confident. And I have some tactics to help you with those nerves. Then you want to give them a plan. So baby steps, 3 quick steps. So if you say, working with me would be easy. First, we're going to do this, then we'll do this, and then we'll do this. If you give them too much of a plan, it's going to overwhelm them. They're going to think about it for too long. They won't buy. So you want it really, really quick. Then the last 2 pieces are also really important, right? So if you don't do this, right, you might be really nervous on stage. If you don't do this, I know that the nerves creep up at the last minute, and I really don't want that to happen to you. But if you do, I think you're going to have an excellent speech and you're going to make an impact on your audience, whatever that might be. So ending with positivity is always huge. I love this framework, and it has worked for me. There was a period of time where I would send some follow-ups and it'd be like, oh, let me know if you have any questions. I'm always here, blah, blah, blah. But the moment that I actually used this for the very first time with a client, she responded in 10 minutes and she said, let's do it. So it's the impact that you're making with storytelling. You're positioning that person as the hero of your story or of their own story, and you're really just that guide to bring them along the way. There's a lot of different places that you can use this, certainly obviously in email marketing, but also when it comes to like webinars that you're doing, or if you are giving presentations. But I know that a big place that we're trying to work storytelling in, of course, is also social media. And luckily, we have Jenny on the call, and she's going to dive into how this all translates into your social media accounts.
Thank you, Steph. I'm like viciously taking notes over here without trying to lose my own page. So that was so good. So Steph really helped us understand how to tell a story and the importance of it. So I really want to help you tie that into your social media so that you can actually sell. What is the point of telling the stories? Well, stories make people feel, it connects you with your audience, and feelings or emotions drive action. and action is what's going to get you the sale. So we kind of want to reverse engineer that and start with what action you want to take. Most people are going to jump to, I want you to hire me as your realtor. And so they're going to try and direct sell without any kind of warming or nurturing that lead. In social media, it is not going to be an immediate sell as it may be if you're talking to someone in a consultation. We have multiple pieces of the puzzle that we have to work with in order to hit them at each point, right? So if you go to the next slide, you'll see it's much like a funnel. One more, Rachel, sorry. So the first step is attraction. We want to get eyes on our content, but not just any eyes. Virality is not the goal. We want to get the right eyes on your content so that we can get out there and get in front of more people. If we're selling right away, we're not going to reach a large audience. So that's a huge piece that we have to start with. This is funny, trending, shareable, or savable content. In the real estate industry, keeping current matters is one of the best examples of shareable content. They make content that realtors will share to their stories. So how can you create something that your audience would want to share with their people or save? The next step is warming. So you've got the eyes on your account, right? Then you need to warm them. You need to nurture these people. You need to engage with them. We are humans and humans want to connect with other humans. It's a human to human. It's not just a numbers game. You need to engage with the people. You can't just post and hope that people come to you without you doing any kind of outbound engagement. And this doesn't mean dropping in the DM saying, hey girl, selling your product right away. This means you're having genuine conversations like you would if you were to walk up to them at a networking event or a social hour, etc. So this is where you're really educating your clients. You're showing them a little bit of behind the scenes of the process. Instagram stories is a great example of this. You're showing that relatability and conversational aspect. Maybe for me, I love sharing a good podcast recommendation. So I would share that, and that will encourage others to engage and say, oh, I listened to this too. Here's my favorite part. Or on the flip side, if somebody's asking for a good book recommendation, I am in their DMs sharing my top book recommendations. So what are the things that are already natural to you? What are those conversation pieces that you're already having? And how can you connect them? And then we are going to get to the conversion. This is where the sales happen. So this is where we're telling the stories that our clients have experienced. We're sharing the features and benefits of our services or products, and we're giving them freebies or lead grabs so that we can continue them in this, nurturing them and bringing them to that conversion. So back to the action that you want them to take. So on social media, they can take a variety of actions, right? So if you see a post, you can like, you can save, share with a friend, tag a friend. They might binge your content. They might follow you, comment, purchase what you have to offer, join your email list. They might DM you or share to their stories. So it's not always about just getting them right to a buyer's or seller's consultation or right to the sale of whatever you sell. A lot of times there is all this attraction and warming pieces needed to then get them to the conversion, which is where storytelling comes in. So when we determine what action we want them to take, then we need to decide what feelings cause them to take that action. And the best way to do this is just observe your own consumer behavior. So if you're scrolling through social media and you see a funny post, what action do you take? You're typically not like, I'm going to go buy their product right now, right? You may first share this with your best friends, share it in the group chat, share it with your husband, whoever comes to mind, you might share it. If it's a super inspiring quote, again, you might not just go right to the purchase, but you might save it so that you can remind yourself later, or you would share it to your stories, or maybe tag a friend that you think of. So there's all these different actions that are overlooked often on social media that we want them to drive them to those things too. They're little micro sales before we do the big pitch and the big sales. And that way, then our stories then can convert to the sales. So once you've determined the action and you know what feeling you want them to feel in order to take that action, then that's where we decide what story we need to tell to derive that emotion or that feeling. Okay, so again, We all have stories to tell. Oftentimes, one of the biggest things is, I don't have a good story to tell. I don't know what to tell. Another big one I see in my clients is they think that they have to have this huge transformational story, but there's little stories happening to us every single day. So, in the story selling toolkit you'll get at the end of this, if you stay till the end, I have listed a list of prompts so that you can think up a good story. One great example, and feel free to drop it in the chat if you think of it, is name the last time that you had exceptionally good or bad service at a restaurant, a hotel. I think we've all experienced this and know what that's like. And we have a story, right? Like probably something's popping in your mind right now. So the first thing is noticing stories and collecting them. They're all around you every single day. You just have to start noticing them. And then knowing how to tell them using Steph's framework, right? And you're never going to be perfect as you start, right? You have to try and get them out there. You have to practice on social media. Maybe this is a low stakes thing like a story that's only going to last for 24 hours rather than something on your feed. Maybe you find a good friend in business that you practice telling stories to. In the Content Collective, we partnered up and everyone got to practice telling stories to each other. One other important factor is a written story is much different than how you sound when you speak it out loud. And Steph would be the expert on this, but for example, I went to share a story that I had used ChatGPT to help me kind of refine and tweak, and I felt like it was really good. But when I went to go read it out loud, it didn't sound like words that I would use. So you always want to make sure that you're kind of checking, okay, I wrote it out this way. How does it sound when I actually speak it? And you might have to adjust your script from there. One other tip I have for collecting stories is set a 5-minute timer and just look around your room. And I bet there are stories just sitting all around you. For example, as I was prepping for this speech, I looked at my dog and thought of some funny stories of how he's been bringing ticks into the home lately. And I had to go to urgent care because I thought I got a tick in my ear. I did not, do not worry, but it was terrifying. That was a story that popped into my head. So I could probably tie that into my content somehow. The second one I saw was a thermostat. And it came to mind how you need to set your financial thermostat because if your thermostat is low setting, then your thermostat's always going to adjust to that number. So it's adjusting it. That can apply to anything in life. Another one was a family photo. I remembered visiting my nieces and nephews out in Annapolis. So there are stories all around you and you might not even notice. Taking that 5 minutes to just like observe and maybe journal about it is such an easy way to start, again, collecting those stories. Another fun one that I've heard is going on story walks. So you go on a walk until you find something funny or something notable that you can tell a story about. There are countless stories all around us every single day. Again, those prompts in the story selling toolkit will help you kind of get your wheels turning. If you've been in business, you've probably heard of RAS, or your reticular activating system. If you buy a Toyota RAV4 like I just did, now I see them everywhere. My husband thinks it's hilarious to say this is what Toyota people do to each other on the street. So now every time I see a Toyota car, I'm like, so what we focus on expands. So focus on finding stories, and your reticular activating system is going to start finding these. Collect them, write them down, put them in your phone app. Then we can tie it all together, and we need this action to take place, or we want them to take this action. Then we need them to feel this way. So maybe we want them to laugh. Therefore, I want to pull from one of my funny stories so that I can tie it all together and get them to take the action that I want to. You want to go to the next slide, Rachel?
Yes, one quick question for you that's in
Yeah.
the chat that I think both you and Steph could potentially ring in on. Becca's saying, I'm pretty long-winded when it comes to copywriting stories. Do you have any tips to make copy more digestible?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm long-winded too, so
Oh, I
get
guess
it.
would you say long-winded is a bad thing? Maybe like start with that bite-sized piece of things.
Steph, you may have a better answer for this. I do think concise is important. Attention spans are very short, including mine. I play all my TikToks on 2x speed, so I have no patience on Instagram to sit through a video. But I do think it's helpful to, like, how I did on ChatGPT. Like, I wrote out my story with my long-winded writing, and then I said, help me write this more clear and concise. And I probably did like 5 back and forth tweaks with it to get it like more concise, more clear. Another tool I use is having my husband check it, because he's like a good critic of mine. Like, he also has ADHD, so if he's bored, like, I can see it in his eyes instantly, and I'm like, okay, if you're bored of this, then everyone else is. So kind of having somebody who can give you that feedback would be my best advice. Steph, I don't know if you have more.
Yeah, I think like the first piece around certainly get your long-winded version out there, because that's clearly how your brain is processing the story and how you process, writing in general and like language. But I also think asking yourself then, and I do this all the time because I'm also long-winded. So there's always a point to your story, right? There's always some sort of a point. If there's not, then we don't want it. There should be a point or a theme or like some of there of why does this matter. So I always go through and I ask myself, does my reader need this detail to get to the point? And if not, I just scratch it. So that'll kind of just help you, like that thought process of like what does my audience need to know to get to the point. That helps me usually scratch like half of it, and it'll get it down to really those bare bones. So I like the idea too with ChatGPT. I haven't used it as much as I could, probably because I'm just like a natural form. I want to get all my thoughts down first. But yes, ChatGPT would be a really good tool for that too.
I like
I
that
love that.
filter, Steph, of does my audience need this detail?
Mhm.
And
love
what
that.
Rachel, you put in the chat is great. ChatGPT as an editor or a creative brainstorming partner, collaborator, not your
Mhm.
content creator. If your wheels are stuck and you can't think of anything, you could probably get some like prompts from ChatGPT, like, hey, help me tell a good story. Give me prompts to notice stories that have happened in my last week. But stories are personal. And in saturated markets, you can say the same thing over and over again. For example, I think there's a lot of females on here, so you can relate with this. I have heard about cycle syncing for years. I have tried to learn about it and implement it into my life, but it wasn't until one gal, Menstrual Mogul, I listened to her podcast, that she said it in a way that resonated with me, stuck with me, and now I'm like, I get it. The light bulb clicked, right? I've probably heard the same exact things 100 times, but because she said it with her experience that related to me, I understood it and it made sense. So, how can you do the same and trust that, like, even in a sea of a saturated market, there's only one of you, only one person who's experienced your stories and your experiences. So, telling stories through your lens, not necessarily ChatGPT.
Love that.
Okay, so I want to walk through an example. Um, if you want to have a realtor hire you, or if you want your clients as a realtor to hire you, realtor number one is going to tell a sales story, right? So they say a post with a picture of the sold sign, nothing wrong with it. Congrats to the newest homeowners. Want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Give me a call. I think we've all heard that a million times, right? Realtor two instead shares the story of how they helped their buyers become cash buyers through their favorite preferred lenders, Rachel Robole at AnnieMac Home Mortgage, and their cash to keys. They became cash buyers, and then they were in a multiple offer situation. It was super competitive. And these buyers won not because they were the highest priced offer, but because they were cash buyers. And so that is a story that shows the client as the hero, right? And you're the guy that helped them connect to this lender who helped them then solve their problem and get to the solution. And from there, then people are going to be like, wow, they are helping clients connect or solve these problems that I'm not seeing from other agents. you will connect with them and be more impressed with that agent on a deeper level than the one who just says, here's another buyer picture that sold last week. We've all done it. I've done it. I used to be a realtor. Well, I am still, but you get my point. That is kind of the saturated same old same that people are seeing, and they're not going to know anything more about you or what kind of service you provide your clients. Whereas the second one with the story really causes emotion and feelings and connection, and they're going to remember that story, remember you when it comes time for them to buy or sell. So, wrapping it all up, stories create feelings, which drive action. So, what action do you want them to take to feel a certain emotion? And what story do you pair with it to get them there? And with that, any questions?
Ooh, that was a lot of goodness. I feel like everyone's probably digesting. But if you have a question, we'll give it a few minutes if you want to throw it in the chat, and we will take them one by one. I see some people typing, so we will let them populate.
Make sure to stick around. We have the story selling toolkit too that we're going to be dropping. I did put book and podcast recommendations in there. You totally called me out of it.
I love it. Well, and as people are, or like as we're waiting for questions, do you either of you have any suggestions of, okay, we're talking about collecting stories, like where does one collect those? Do you write them in a journal? Do you write them in your notes on your iPhone? Like where have you found good habits of collecting stories?
I have a very recent example of that, and I'll keep it short because I know that we have a question here. But I actually like went through my old memory boxes. I don't know if anybody has a mother who like just drops off buckets of like old crafts and trapped keys and like random stuff that she's collected, but my mom did that, and it brought a slew of stories for me to tell. I think I told a couple of them on my social media about like my bottle rocket, which was weird, but like that is for sure a place that I go when I'm in search of some inspo.
I love that. Childhood.
Yeah.
That's a good one. For me, a big way of collecting and noticing stories recently is an exercise from the book Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And what you do is you write from your stream of consciousness first thing in the morning, 3 pages a day is what she recommends. I don't put a rule on myself because the second I put a rule or confine myself, my brain rebels. Don't know why, probably ADHD, but just unfiltered brain dumping that way. So many creative thoughts and stories have come out of that. Just like taking the time and giving yourself the space to think of stories, because I think so often what people tend to do is go to social media and try and get inspired from other people, but there's no faster way to drain your creativity than to scroll and look at what other people are doing. Leah, to answer your question on a story example that's random or unrelated to your business and how you can connect it, that is a really good question. I probably won't tell this perfectly because I didn't plan it, but I shared one recently on my feed about how I went to this bar class at Lifetime Fitness, and I was struggling hardcore, and past me would have tried to like perform and impress. However, I looked around the room and everyone was like killing it. I'm like, you know what? I need to honor my body. So I made modifications. And the second I did that, I saw another girl like take a sigh of relief and start making her own modifications. And so showing how imperfections and showing up imperfect can allow others to also show up imperfect. And that's on social media. So true. We often want to like perform and put out this high quality, get that external validation from others. But if we just put stuff out there and let it be imperfect, we are giving permission to fellow women and other people to be able to show up on social media imperfectly as well.
That's a fabulous example. We have a question. How do you make sponsored stories, so collaborators, ads, etc., believable and relatable?
Ooh.
I would, I have two things. First, I'm assuming too that like because you're advertising, you believe in that product. One thing that I always talk about with, when you're speaking about a topic, you have to be so passionate about it. Otherwise, no matter what you try and do, somebody will see through you. So you really have to believe in it as well. But there's been a couple of influencers that I know I even follow, and they started doing ads with particular products or particular services or whatever, that actually had that connection before it even was an ad. And even adding something like that in, an element of realism, like before I even partnered up with this product, I was using it for, years, or I gave it a try and it worked. So that's something I don't know that I am attracted to when I see things like ads, but Jenny, you might have some different thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would say, well, and it so depends on the type of content you're putting out there. I'm like picturing like a single graphic ad right now. How can you show the client as the hero and what features and benefits your product or service has in one little graphic and evoke emotions? So like photos can do that, text, colors, branding, that can help tie it in. Um, if you're doing a reel, B-roll can tell a story. It's the visuals that are telling the story, not just whatever you're verbally speaking about. So how can you add in those elements that are real and authentic? And I think, like you said, Steph, like if you're working with an influencer or doing some kind of UGC content, then you could have them share what's something authentic to them. Client
Love that.
testimonials too, like client stories, success stories are huge.
Mhm.
So good. Okay. What are your favorite or the best platforms to post your stories where you receive the most interaction?
Instagram's my favorite. Facebook is where I'll get all my parents' friends, make me feel like
Yeah.
the best person in the world. They will hype me up, man. If you need a good confidence booster, go post a story on Facebook. Um, TikTok's another great one. We talked about this briefly before the call. The bill was signed to ban TikTok in the US. There's like 6 months to a year for them to divest their interest. Not going to dive into that a whole lot, but if you're not already on TikTok, I don't necessarily recommend starting that as a platform right now, just with the uncertainty of where it's going. If you're already on it, that's great. How can you redirect them to other platforms and make sure you're hitting people multiple ways? Steph, I know email is a big one for you that you use.
Yeah, I use a lot of email marketing. And really, I think that's part of it is, the storytelling is what I try to do. I know a lot of people have like a lot of different newsletters, which is great too. And something that I eventually might start, but I've found it's such a great tool to almost practice telling your stories too, and like seeing what resonates, seeing who clicks in, who clicks what. So I love doing email marketing, especially for you long-winded folks. Super, super nice there. But in terms too of like Instagram, I would say I usually receive the best interaction on like stories on the actual story tool, like as opposed to even reels or posts. I'm always getting like the hearts and and people like asking questions and engaging, when it's actually on the story piece. I think it's just easier, but yeah, so that's what I would add there.
Well, and I loved your advice, Jenny, of like Instagram stories being like a low stake way to start. Like it will be gone in 24 hours. And I think that is a good place to practice.
Yes, for sure. I love stories. Stories are like the number one place to engage with your audience, period. Outbound engagement, inbound engagement, just like the authentic, the real. It's such like the genuine human piece behind it. So that's a great place.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking at the time. I want to honor everyone's time. So first and foremost, Steph and Jenny, thank you for joining us today and sharing your expertise. Steph has her ebook that you can go and download. You have one-on-one coaching sessions that people can sign up for. Jenny, you have the Content Collective that people can join. If they're looking for social media services, you offer those as well. But like at the very least, feel free to type story selling into the chat, and we will make sure to send the toolkit that we have compiled for you straight to your inbox this afternoon. We are here to answer questions offline. If you have them, make sure to follow Steph and Jenny on social media and reach out one-on-one with them with questions, thoughts, etc. Thank you guys all for joining. This was a super fun 45 minutes to spend with you all.